So no computational pressure. So before spreadsheet software or digital instruments, there was no reason for standardized logic. So again, I'm kind of imagining that obviously there was some kind of aristocratic, tilt towards music because it was something that you would think leisurely people would do. And sometimes when you get a leisurely thing, it's like just the fact that it's difficult or that it is wonky becomes kind of cool in and of itself, right? Because now I'm doing something that is a little bit weird. So I'm thinking maybe some of the wonkiness is kind of intentional. To me, as an American, that's the kind of thing that bothers, that the having intentional wonkiness when you could make it easier kind of drives me crazy. Like it's just like why, like if you can make it easier, I feel like you should make it anyway. So a quick summary: the old way of thinking, rotating mode positions, relative scale positions, renaming all the knights on the round table. What I want to do instead is have a fixed mode numerical system. All the knights on the round table are equal. They all keep the same name, and I memorize all of their names and the relationship between all of them, and I can describe them then by their relationships. And that's going to be when we get into chord constructions and the intervals. Letters A through G, so we did the same things with the letters. I'm not going to give everybody two names and whatnot. They all have one name, and I would like that name to be a number. They're all even, and then I can count with them and look at distances with simple math. Memorize scale shapes per key. Reuse mode shapes with fixed numbers. So I'm going to look at the same diatonic key. There's only 12 of them. They all have the same shape on the guitar. There's one master shape for all modes. That's all I need to memorize. That's obviously the easiest thing to do. I'm not a wonky jazz guy over here or something. This is the simple. Modes are the simple thing. So contextual interval analysis, absolute interval and mode framework. So written theory for paper versus the visual theory for fretboard. Now, again, this is a thing that some people will argue if you do this, if you learn by shape, again, you're not sophisticated because you won't be able to write it down in the traditional system. I do want to bridge the gap so that we can write it down, but I also want to be able to bridge the gap to communicate shape-wise. I want to be able to learn the cage system and be able to communicate well without having this blockage where we're like, oh, now I've changed my language to think in a way that I don't want to visualize the guitar. I want to bridge the gap to communicate in the modal and like a shape-based system and be able to see how that ties into a scale-based system. I think we'll be able to do both of those things. We'll be able to lead into why it's natural to learn this way, and then that will naturally give us the answer of the scale-based system so that we not only know how to communicate it, but we know how we derived it. We know how to go back from one to the other, which gives us a better understanding just in general. So instead of saying this is a D Dorian scale, the second mode of C, you can now say this is mode 2. So in other words, if you're communicating with someone else and you're like, okay, now what I want to do is be playing in the Dorian. So what do you have to do? If I tell someone it's in Dorian, they're like, oh man, all I really know is the major and minor or something like that shape. So what's the natural thing to do is to say, well, look, we're playing in the key of C, but we're making the 2, the Dorian, which happens to be a D note, the tonic. We're going to play around the 2. That's just, again, the natural thing to do. So in other words, if you're on the fretboard and you're looking at C major and related modes, I could say, look, now we're going to play in the D Dorian. So if you say, okay, I'll play it, but I don't know Dorian. I only know major and minor. Okay, we're in C major, but we're going to play around the 2, meaning absolute mode number 2 is what I would call it, which is the Dorian. So then that's the easy way to communicate it. Why don't we normally do that? People do normally do that, but when they start to think about, I'm going to play the 1-4-5 in Dorian, you see what that forced me to do? That forced me to think about this not as mode number 2 it forced me to renumber it to number 1, the Knights on the Round Table. And now it's difficult for me to talk about the relative positions of the 1, 4, 5 and which chord I'm playing. That's the problem that comes in that we'll have to deal with. Conclusion. So fixed mode numbering system 1 through 7 gives modal thinking and identity, not just relativity. So I want to point out then also the modes are removing the bureaucracy. That makes it easier. The modes are actually the thing that makes it easier, not more difficult. A numbering system that's fixed based on just the major mode is the natural, easy thing to do. And that's what we'll do. The Latin names are what we have to deal with. That's fine. So numbering notes 1 through 12 support calculation, visualization, and transposition. Together, they form a mathematical musical theory system ready for digital age, one that works on paper, fretboard, and spreadsheet alike. So again, I'm not just saying that just because it works on spreadsheets and whatnot. It's actually the easy thing to do, which clearly is made clear now by the technology allowing more people to see it and map it out in different ways. And that's going to lead us to seeing clearly that we could map everything out in more of a streamlined way.